The shuttle's thick atmospheric shields flickered off as Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped onto the alien soil, her environmental suit adjusting to the humid air of Kepler 4b. The world pulsed with bioluminescent life trees that breathed light in waves of purple and green, moss that sparkled like scattered diamonds, and air thick with spores that glowed like fireflies frozen in amber. She brushed aside a curtain of phosphorescent vines, their touch sending ripples of blue light cascading through the canopy above. Her scanner hummed steadily, cataloging chemical signatures and biological markers. 3 months of orbital surveys had confirmed it. This world harbored complex life, possibly sentient. The xenobiology team had designated it a Category 7 contact scenario approach with extreme caution. Document everything, disturb nothing. Elena activated her helmet recorder, speaking in measured tones. Initial ground survey, Day 1. The biodiversity exceeds our wildest projections. I'm detecting at least 40 distinct pheromone signatures within a 100-meter radius. She paused, watching a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a jellyfish drift past, its translucent wings pulsing with internal light. No signs of the apex predator species detected from orbit. Proceeding with standard collection protocols, the mission briefing echoed in her memory as she moved deeper into the jungle. Commander Hayes had been uncharacteristically grim during the final preparation meeting aboard the orbital station. The thermal signatures we've detected suggest pack hunters, he'd said, pulling up holographic reconstructions. Large, organized, and territorial. The Prometheus expedition to Kepler 186f encountered something similar. The room had grown quiet. Everyone knew about Prometheus' 17 crew members, 0 survivors, only scattered recordings of screams and running. These aren't Earth predators, Hayes had continued. They don't follow our rules. On their world, showing weakness isn't just dangerous, it's a death sentence. Keep your fear responses under control. Move with purpose, and whatever you do, don't run. Elena had nodded along with the others, confident in her training. 20 years of xenobiology fieldwork across a dozen worlds had taught her to remain calm under pressure. She'd faced charging megafauna on Proxima 3, negotiated her way past territorial silkweavers on Wolf 1061c. Fear was just another biological response to be managed. Now, as she collected samples from a cluster of spiral-shaped fungi, she felt oddly at peace. The jungle's symphony clicks, trills, and harmonious drones created an almost meditative atmosphere. A group of 6-legged herbivores grazed nearby, their crystalline antlers catching and refracting light. They regarded her with mild curiosity, their large eyes blinking slowly before returning to their meal of glowing fruit. Elena didn't notice the golden eyes watching her from the shadows. They tracked her movements with predatory precision, pupils dilating and contracting as they analyzed this strange new creature that walked upright and smelled of metals and synthetic materials. The eyes belonged to something small, barely larger than a house cat, but its heritage was written in every curve of muscle, every silent step through the undergrowth. The cub had been following her for 20 minutes, fascinated by this alien that moved so differently from anything in its experience. Where the native prey animals moved in quick, nervous bursts, this creature maintained a steady, purposeful gait, where others cowered and fled at the slightest sound. This one seemed almost oblivious to the dangers around it. Curiosity finally overcame caution. The cub launched itself from its hiding spot, a blur of iridescent fur and gleaming claws. It landed on Elena's extended arm, tiny teeth clamping onto her thick glove, in what it considered a playful greeting, the same way it would interact with its siblings. The contact lasted perhaps 2 seconds. Elena, startled by the sudden weight and movement, reacted on pure instinct. The sound that erupted from her throat was neither scream nor shout, but something primal, a yowl that started low and climbed to a pitch that made the very air seem to vibrate. Yowl. The effect was instantaneous and absolute. The cub released her glove, as if it had become molten metal, its fur standing on end until it appeared twice its actual size. It scrambled backward, a mix of growl and whimper escaping its throat as it pressed itself low to the ground. But the cub's reaction was nothing compared to what happened in the jungle around them. The ambient sounds, the clicks, trills, and drones that had filled the air moments before, ceased entirely. The silence was so complete that Elena could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Through the gaps in the canopy, she caught glimpses of movement, large shapes freezing mid-stride, heads turning in her direction, bodies lowering into defensive postures. She stood perfectly still, her training finally kicking in. Don't run, don't show fear. But what had just happened? The cub remained frozen 10 feet away, its golden eyes wide, with something Elena recognized, despite the species barrier: terror. The silence stretched for 30 seconds that felt like hours. Then, slowly, the jungle began to breathe again. But the sounds were different, no subdued, cautious. The herbivores that had been grazing nearby had vanished. Even the drifting jellyfish butterflies had fled to higher altitudes. Unknown to Elena, her accidental vocalization had just rewritten her position in this world's hierarchy. On Kepler 4b, sound was the primary indicator of dominance. The planet's apex predators, the cub's own species, had evolved a specific vocalization that triggered deep, instinctual fear responses in every other creature. It was a sound that meant death was near, that running was futile, that submission was the only path to survival. And Elena had just produced something remarkably similar. Aboard the orbital station, mission control erupted in confusion. "Did you hear that?" Dr. Patel asked, pulling off his headphones. "What the hell was that sound?" Commander Hayes replayed the audio, his expression shifting from concern to amazement. "That was Vasquez. She just ... screamed." "No, that's not right," she yowled. He pulled up the biological sensors. "Look at this, every life sign within a kilometer just had a massive fear response spike. Whatever she did, she just made everything on that planet think she's the scariest thing that's ever existed." "Should we extract her?" someone asked. Hayes shook his head slowly. "Wait, look at her vitals. She's calm, and ... Is that the predator cub? It's still there, just ... submitting." Through the cub's eyes had humans been able to see through them, the world looked very different. Its vision, attuned to infrared and electromagnetic spectra, painted Elena as a figure of contradictions. Her heat signature remained steady, lacking the rapid fluctuations of frightened prey. No fear pheromones emanated from her form. Yet she had produced the sound, the terrible sound that even adult members of the cub's pack used sparingly. The cub's juvenile brain struggled to categorize this creature. Not prey never made the sound. Not a rival predator. It smelled wrong, looked wrong, moved wrong. Something else entirely. Something new. Something potentially more dangerous than anything the cub species had encountered in their million-year evolutionary history. Slowly, cautiously, the cub began to follow Elena as she resumed her survey. It maintained a respectful distance, close enough to observe, far enough to flee. When she stopped to collect more samples, it stopped. When she moved, it moved. A strange dance of mutual assessment began. In the trees above, adult members of the pack gathered. They communicated in ultrasonic frequencies, debating this unprecedented situation. The matriarch, scarred from hundreds of successful hunts, had heard the sound clearly. In her 40 years of life, she had never heard it from anything except her own kind, and even then, only in the most extreme circumstances of dominance, assertion. The adults watched as Elena set up her temporary camp, activating a small force field generator and unpacking her equipment. The cub, growing bolder, crept closer. When Elena sat on a fallen log to review her datapad, the cub positioned itself 20 feet away, sitting in a mirror of her posture. Elena noticed the behavior and, moving slowly, reached into her pack for dried protein synthetic meat from her rations. She placed it between them, then backed away. The cub approached, sniffed, then looked at her with golden eyes. It growled, softly, not threat, but question. Without thinking, Elena responded with a softer yowl. Yowl, the cub flattened itself, grabbed the meat, and retreated, but it didn't flee. It began eating, never taking its eyes off her. A bridge had been built from a single sound. As the binary suns descended, painting the jungle in gold and crimson, more creatures emerged. They gave Elena wide berth, but didn't flee entirely. Word was spreading. The Skywalker had the voice. Dr. Patel monitored the situation from orbit, fascinated by the developing dynamic. "We might be witnessing something unprecedented," he told Hayes. "Cross-species bonding based on acoustic dominance. She's accidentally hijacked their entire social hierarchy." "Don't intervene," Hayes ordered. "Let it play out. But prep an emergency extraction, just in case." As darkness fell and the jungle's bioluminescence grew brighter, Elena noticed more eyes watching her from the shadows. Not just the golden eyes of the predators, but the silver eyes of the herbivores, the compound eyes of the insectoid creatures, even the photosensitive patches of the plant-like entities that bordered on sentience. She was becoming something she never intended to be, a figure of myth in an alien mythology that was being written in real time. The ancient stories the pack elders told their young passed down through pheromone markers and ritual movements spoke of the time before their dominance, when greater predators walked the world. The stories were meant as warnings, reminders that evolution was an arms race they couldn't afford to lose. But now, something from beyond the sky had come, and it carried the voice of dominance without the scent of competition. 3 days into her survey, Elena had established a routine. The cub she'd started calling it Aureus, due to its golden eyes, now followed her openly. The adult predators maintained their distance but no longer hid. She could walk through territories that should have been killing grounds, protected by nothing more than the memory of a sound. Then Marcus arrived. The second shuttle landed in a clearing half a kilometer from Elena's camp. Marcus Chen, a geologist with more enthusiasm than xenobiology training, emerged with his equipment and immediately began taking readings. He hadn't been properly briefed on Elena's situation, a communications error that would nearly prove catastrophic. When one of the adult predators approached to investigate the new arrival, Marcus reacted according to standard protocol for dangerous fauna encounters. He drew his sonic deterrent and fired. The sound, a high-frequency burst designed to disorient Earth. Predators had a different effect here. 2 native creatures, it registered as prey sound, weakness and fear. The dynamics Elena had established shattered instantly. The jungle erupted. Predators converged from all directions, their hunting instincts triggered by what they perceived as a vulnerable target. Marcus, realizing his mistake too late, began backing toward his shuttle, finger on the trigger of his deterrent. Elena heard the commotion and ran toward the chaos, Aureus bounding alongside her. She arrived to find Marcus surrounded, the predators closing in with the coordinated precision of seasoned pack hunters. Without hesitation, she drew in the deepest breath her lungs could hold. The yowl that emerged was louder than the first, powered by adrenaline and desperate need. It rolled across the jungle like a physical force, causing leaves to tremor and smaller creatures to flee in panic. Ya, ah, 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 oh, bleu, 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 bleu. The predators froze mid-stride. Marcus, white-faced with terror, stood perfectly still as Elena walked between him and the pack. She maintained eye contact with the matriarch, her posture rigid with assumed authority she didn't truly possess. For a long moment, 2 apex predators, one by birth, one by accident, assessed each other. Then, slowly, the matriarch lowered her head, not in submission, exactly, but in acknowledgement. The pack retreated, melting back into the jungle shadows. Elena grabbed Marcus by the arm, her voice sharp with controlled anger. "We're not the invaders here. We're guests, and you just nearly started an interspecies war with a sonic deterrent." As she led him back to her camp, explaining the delicate situation he'd stumbled into, Aureus padded along beside them. The cub had made its choice. Whatever Elena was, predator, prey, or something entirely outside their understanding, she was worth following. From the orbital station, the xenobiology team watched in amazement. They were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a symbiotic relationship built on a single misunderstood sound. Elena's accidental yowl had become a key, unlocking possibilities for communication and coexistence that no amount of careful planning could have achieved. As the weeks passed, Elena's research evolved from biological surveys to documenting an unprecedented interspecies dynamic. The predators began leaving offerings at her camp. Aureus grew from curious cub to companion, attempting to mimic her vocalizations. The sound of her yowl spread through the jungle like legend. Creatures she'd never encountered knew to give her space. She had become, through accident, a figure of power in an alien ecosystem. When Elena's survey ended, the entire pack gathered at her shuttle. Aureus pressed its head against her gloved hand one final time. As the shuttle lifted off, Elena watched the predators raise their heads and produce their own version of the yowl. The intent was clear. They had feared her scream, but she had offered them something far more valuable: respect, understanding, and proof that the universe held wonders beyond comprehension. The official report would use clinical terms like acoustic dominance display, but Elena knew the truth was simpler and more profound. Sometimes, the most significant moments of first contact came not from careful planning, but from the startled yowl of a frightened scientist whose glove had just been bitten by an alien cub.